Welcome back, everyone. If you saw my previous video, we kind of went through this 1988 Miata Valley Runner. This is kind of an all-terrain mountain bike. But this is a typical all-terrain mountain bike that you'd find in a bike shop in the late 80s. This bike was made in 1988, as I stated. There are no suspension fork, no suspension anything. Not even in the seat post. It has some pretty dated components by today's standards. It has these early Shimano index shifters that are about as precise as as a dollar store food slicer. First thing that popped into my mind is something that would be terribly made. But they're very early shifters for the SIS system. It has plastic brake handles, and but for its time, it was a pretty nice bike, and I'd say it's pretty well built even by today's standards. It's even got these early center pole rear brakes, and it has an early cantilever brake on the front. Not early, but a fairly older design. I took this bike for a quick shakedown test, and it goes very nicely, very smooth. Shifts nice as it ever will. It rides nice, nice geometry. I like this bike. But today we're going to be working on a different one. This bike belongs to the husband of the duo. This particular bike was purchased new in 2004 by LL Bean, which is in kind of a country-oriented outfitter store. Actually, that's where I buy all my fleece jackets, and I get fleeced in the process because they charge so goddamn much. Now, this bike intrigues me. Now, Schwinn, they're owned by, I believe, Pacific Cycle, which is a Taiwanese company. And I've seen them at Walmart, Target. This particular bike, it's not high-end by any stretch. It's not even something you'd find in a bike shop, as far as I know. But it's not a pile of crap either. The componentry is nicer than my Raleigh C30, which has the bottom of the barrel Shimano derailleurs. It has the I guess these are department store derailleurs. You'd find these on a Hoffe or even a Mongoose. They're very, very low on derailleurs. That bike has nicer derailleurs, and these bikes are the same age, within a year of each other. And I think they actually might even have the same Tektro brakes. Let's see. Pro Max. Oh, just as good. But these, the Acera derailleurs I've had on 2 of my mountain bikes growing up, and they're very nice for what they are. For the casual rider, for the commuter, they're not a bad derailleur. You wouldn't find them on a high-end bike, but for what this bike was intended for, they're actually quite decent. What else do we have? We have a suspension seat post. Probably the same seat post that's on my Raleigh. We're pretty close to it. So what we need to do is we'll do a quick once-over. Let's see what the bike really needs, and then we're going to go from there. So first things first, the tires are completely flat. He suspects that there's a puncture in one of the tubes. So what we're going to do is we're going to fill them up with air, and we're going to see if they come back down again. Oh, one more thing. It actually has a cushioned damper in the gooseneck. That's actually quite nice. I don't know how effective it is, but it's got a little bit of cushioning. It looks to be adjustable, and there's a little bit of play in it. And when these bikes were new, chances are they were never set up correctly to begin with. So we're probably going to wind up with loose bearings. We're going to end up having to do some derailleur adjustments. The brakes will be out of whack. Case in point. A little better. I'm anxious to dig into this bike, so let's do it. Let's get the tires pumped up and run it through its paces. All right. So let's take a look at what the pressure should be on these. These are rated for 35 to 65 pounds. I think I'm going to fill them to 45 pounds. Again, we're missing the valve stem caps just like the Miata, so I might pick up a set of universal valve stem caps. We'll take care of that. Well, I like having valve stem caps because they prevent, they end up actually helping to prevent dust and dirt from getting into the valve stems. So they're kind of a good idea to put them back on when they're missing. There's a leak. Rear tire, not so good. So there's definitely a leak back here. So we're going to end up pulling that wheel off, taking the tube out. We're going to find the leak and we're going to patch it. I don't have my patch kit yet. I ordered one. So we're going to have to go back to that later on. Okay, how about the front wheel? Now, as I pointed out in the Miata video, not to be confused with a popular Japanese roadster, I wanted to make sure the tires were still good. So while we have some air in this tire, let's take a look and see if we have any dry rot. Nope, the tire's just fine. So, what kind of tire is this? It's got a Moab sweet roll. Sounds nice. Okay. So. Alright, let's try the front. Straighten out the tire and the tube. Definitely the valve stem. So this bike has chromoly forks. Notice that it's stamped right on the side. So I'm sure they're pretty sturable. They're pretty durable forks, but they're probably not the most lightweight forks in the market. Okay, here we go. 50 pounds. Okay, I don't hear anything. I should probably shut my dehumidifier off. Oh, you know what? This tube is crooked. Get the air out. So what next? Now this bike doesn't have as much surface rust and whatnot as that Valley Runner did, but it does need some help. It's very dirty. We'll clean it up. WD-40 and a rag should be good as new. But what we need to do now is get her on. Let's take the wheels off. Remember, not built by professionals. Probably going to have some pre-delivery inspection related issues. Step 1, disconnect the brakes, front and rear. Flip it upside down. Let's get these wheels off. Now this one's got quick release front and rear, so that should be nice. So let's start off by checking for loose bearings. I'm actually going to tighten this back down again. Surprisingly, this bike has sealed bearings. Well, there's a rubber seal on the hub, which should protect the bearings from any water and dirt contaminants. Okay, these feel nice. Very nice. I don't feel any play at all. I'm going to take the wheel off. and we're going to feel how the axle spins with our fingers. The hand is a very sensitive instrument. Interestingly enough, this bike has these little axle locks. What do they think of next? Okay, so I got the wheel in my hand and I'm going to get it spinning, holding the axle, and I'm going to feel for any grittiness, any knocking, any irregularities of any kind. I'm going to use my fingers to kind of support the axle, and I'm looking at it to see if it's trying to grab it. If the bearings are grabbing the axle, it's going to start rolling in my fingers. These are perfect. Absolutely perfect. That's what you want to see. So let's get these locks back in. So, okay, just like the front, looks like this one does not have the same sealing system. Let's check it. Oh yeah, the tire's already flat. So this wheel's coming off anyway. Bearings feel good. Actually, very good. No play of any kind. Let's take the wheel off. This bike is definitely low miles, for sure. Okay. Get that back off there. And just like the front, we're going to grab the axle and we're going to get the wheel spinning. And yeah, this one could use some lubrication. I feel a lot of grittiness in these bearings. While there's no play of any kind, it definitely needs to be greased. So we're going to pop that axle out and we're going to get some grease in those bearings. While we have that wheel off, I'm going to just go ahead and start cleaning up the rear section of the frame. WD-40 and a microfiber cloth. Why WD-40? Well, it's plentiful and it works. It really does a nice job of getting any old oils and greases and caked up whatevers off the frame. There are fancier, more expensive things you can use. Now, this bike, again, it's low miles. Definitely hasn't seen a lot of road use. This bike has sat more than anything. I can tell because there's just not the typical, wow, this is a terrible paint job. This paint job is extremely rough. The clear coat has a lot of overspray. But if you're just buying a bike to knock around the neighborhood on, it doesn't matter. You know, the cosmetics don't matter, but this paint is very rough to the touch, like sandpaper almost. And that's the difference between, you know, a department store or a sporting goods store bike versus one that you'd find in an actual bike shop. The clear coat finish will be nicer, the paint will be of better quality, but at the end of the day, do these things really matter to most people? Probably not. While we're in here, see how this crank bearing feels, the bottom bracket. So I'm going to kind of wobble it, okay? Feel no movement, no play of any kind. It's actually pretty tight. Chain's in my way. I'm sure this is just fine. All right, okay. Get that in there. Okay. Take the skewer off. Try to get this in this shot a little better than I did with the other bike. I kind of failed with that one, but guess what? I was granted a redo. So these bearings, they feel a little dry, just a little dry. So we're gonna pop them out and take a look and see what's going on. Now, if we were to leave it this way, now this is why it's important regular maintenance, even on an inexpensive bike like this, it's very important because while the bike may not be worth paying a mechanic to do this at a bike shop, it's definitely worth doing, because if you're going to ride this bike for any length of time, if you're going to go on any trips, the last thing you want is an axle bearing or wheel bearing to decide to let go when you're in the middle of nowhere. That is the worst. That is the worst thing ever, and I say that having it happen to me at least more than once. Okay, you know what we got to do? We gotta break a different way. I'm gonna grab the inner bearing race. I really wish I had a better camera. All right. So we're gonna grab the inner bearing race and the lock nut. I thought that would work, but it clearly did not. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to grab hold of that inner bearing race, and we're going to grab the outer lock nut, and we're going to, there we go. That's how you do it. That's how you do it the right way. Okay, here we go. Now this has a Shimano FHRM40 hub, Malaysian build. Doesn't make it a bad guy, but definitely not Japanese made. Yeah, see, this is the problem. So this bike has no seals on the rear axle. Why would you build a mountain bike or an all-terrain bike without any seals on the rear axle? Well, because you don't want it to last, that's for sure. So, while this bike may have no miles on it, you leave this thing in the rain a few times, yeah, if you do that, you are looking for trouble, man. I'm telling you. You are looking for trouble. Yeah, there's sand in there. We're going to have to clean these out. How are we going to do it? Very carefully. Alright. What I'm going to do... Now, these are loose bearings. Now, if you take apart a wheel from an older bike, like something... You know, a kid's bike from the early 90s to all the way as far back as the 1900s, you're probably going to find caged bearings. Caged bearings are generally one shot and done. What happens is when those start to wear out, the cage itself can get ground into the bearings, and it's a whole big thing. These loose bearings can be replaced individually, well, as a set, if they ever need to be, but there's no cage to worry about. So let's take these bearings out. I'm going to try using I've never done it with a magnet before. I figured it could be fun. Could be the worst thing I ever do because I'm going to magnetize the bearings in the process, but they can't roll away on me anyway. Just got to get them all out. Come on, you little bearing. Put them in a rag. There we go. Did I get them all? We got them all. Pokemon, catch them all. Alright, so let's clean these up in the rag. A little WD-40 in there. WD-40 is great for these sorts of projects. Spray them down. Kind of zoom out of the camera here. Show you what I'm doing. So I'm just kind of cleaning them up in the rag. This is a brand new rag, never used. Alright. Okay, so those are all set to go back in. Then we're going to take another rag. I'm going to use a microfiber cloth because it can easily fit inside the bearing race here. And we're going to kind of stuff it in. Keep in mind that there are bearings in the other side of the wheel we need to contend to. I believe this cap comes off. I'm not quite sure how. I'm going to use my pinky, and I'm going to just kind of dig up in there and clean out that race. Get all that old grease out. And I'm going to pack it with fresh grease. As I mentioned in my previous video, we are not using fancy bicycle grease. We are using what I have on hand. This is a universal, multi-purpose, do-it-all, just a generic grease. It's not even brand name, it's Master Pro. So, but hey, it's gooey. It'll provide lubrication. It will do the job. That's all I care about. So let me just wipe that off. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There are 9 bearings in that race. I'll put those aside. Now we're going to get the other bearings out. I use my magnet. The magnet worked really well. Use the same rag. Get them off there. Don't get the bearings mixed up because you don't want to mix up the set. They're kind of worn together and we don't really want to cause any new problems. Alright. I'm going to take a microfiber cloth. Once again, we'll do our best to clean out this bearing race. And while we're here, I'm going to just go ahead and floss my teeth. It's a lot easier when the wheel's off the bike sometimes. So you might be wondering, well, what about the freewheel bearings? Glad you asked. The freewheel bearings are what allow that to spin, and the ratchet assembly, or the pawl. Best left alone unless you need to get in there, I guess. Depending on the which rear cassette the bike, or which type of freewheel or free hub the bike has, whether it is a freewheel or a free hub. And I've got the two mixed up. Depending on what's in there for componentry, you may never have to worry about those bearings ever. They're in a cassette. They're a sealed cassette, and when that cassette wears out, you replace the whole cassette, the whole free hub, I believe it is. On this particular one, I believe that is the case. Now, if you have the old-fashioned freewheel, depending on which one I'm talking about, because I got them mixed up, it's actually assembled onto the hub. You have to remove the locking ring and take the whole thing apart, and you've got about 1 million ball bearings in there, plus the ratchet, pawl, and all that other stuff. Those are harder to work on because they're just a pain in the ass. But if that's what you got, then yeah, if there's a problem with the freewheel, then you want to take it apart, and you can relubricate and clean what you have to. Now, this one spins really freely. I don't have any indication that there's a problem in there. I'm not going to mess with it. I'm just going to floss its teeth a little bit while it's off the bike. Make it nice and pretty. Okay. Now we're going to pack this side with grease. We're going to put these bearings in first because the bearings, or I'm sorry, the outer race was on this, or the axle came out from this side. Does that make sense? Yeah. Get a lot of grease in there, pack her up. Okay. One thing you can do sometimes is you take your axle. And yeah, I'm going to be throwing these racks away anyway. Your axle, right? I want to clean that up real nice. And what you do is you put the axle in like this. Now, what did we say? 9 bearings? Well, I have them. Actually, there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I grabbed one from the wrong pile. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So there's 9 bearings on each side. So at least we know how many there should be. In a pinch, now I did this, and I'm not proud, but I worked on a bike when I was little, probably maybe 9 or 10, and I was missing a bearing. I lost one. So guess what? Oh shit! I just dropped a bearing. That's bad. That's a bad thing. Drop your bearing. Now I gotta find it. But I put an axle back in with 1 less bearing, and yeah. Word to the wise, dropping a bearing is a bad deal because sometimes you can scratch the bearing, which, if you can imagine, is probably not a good thing. So let's see if we can drop these in with the axle. No, maybe not. So we're going to have to. I was hoping I could drop them in, but I don't want the bearings falling down, so I'm going to put the axle in from the opposite direction. A little trick I learned just now. We're going to drop the bearings in. We're going to use our finger to get them in place. But we have the axle in there so that the bearing can't fall down through the axle hole, through the hub. And we don't want to do that. So this helps keep them in place. We can just freely drop them where they're supposed to go and then move on with our lives. Stick the axle back through. There's a lot of grease in here. That's okay. That's what grease is for. Just push them in 1 by 1, 2 by 2, 3 by 3. Is that it? One more. Okay. There we go. They'll push each other out of the way, so if you can't see what you're doing because you put so much damn grease into the assembly, that's okay. They will push their way into line. Okay. Now we're going to drop her in. Yeah. Look at that. It's a fine, fine, fine job. Okay. And we're going to work our way to the other side. We're going to have to drop the axle back out. And then we're going to drop in. Let me reposition my camera. There we go. Now we're going to drop our bearings in, 1 by 1. You've got so much grease in here, it's not even funny. And one of the things I want to mention about some of these less expensive bikes is that they go real lightly on the grease. I remember Hoffies that they used to sell at Walmart, the Made in America ones, you know, the American Pride bikes. They had the American flag on the head tube, you know, whole big thing. Well, those bikes were built with like Vaseline for grease. My dad, whenever I got a new bike, I used to get one every couple of years, and he'd buy me a Huffy because, well, we were poor. And honestly, I usually had a used, you know, whatever used bikes we had kicking around. But I had a couple of new Huffies, and what my dad would do, before I learned how to fix them myself, because he made sure I knew how to fix my own bikes, but he would take them apart and re-grease everything right out of the box. So he would get the bike unassembled from whatever store he bought them from. And I think I got one for my 5th birthday. I got one for my, I think my 7th or 8th birthday, my 7th birthday. And then I got another one for my 10th birthday, and that was the last one my parents ever bought me. After that, I was buying up used bikes or fixing up junkers. But the Huffy bikes that I got from my parents, they were torn apart and reassembled. So my dad would re-grease both front and rear axles, because what was in there from the factory was crap. You know, it was good for a season, and that's about it. So there's no need for that. Alright, so here we go. Keep it nice and snug. A little more. There we go. Now that is vastly improved. That is nice. Okay, let me clean my hands off because I got grease everywhere. Okay, that is not bad. So, now, this axle is good and snug. There's no play. The wheel spins nice. There's no grabbing. This bike will never, this bike has never rolled this nice before. Definitely not. Okay. Now we got to get our hardware back. Where did I put all the hardware? Put the skewers over there. Where'd it go? Where's my shit? I'm missing the spacer and the jam nut. Anybody? Anybody know where they went? Where could my spacer and jam nut and all that stuff possibly be? And another thing, I've noticed that my WD-40 cans aren't as big as they used to be. There seems to be a lot less WD-40 in the same size can. How could these things be related? That's how. It's gonna be a long night, guys. I managed to put my WD-40 down right where, yeah, okay. So now what we need to do is reassemble. Oh, reassemble, Stephanie. Okay. Now, important thing to note, on this particular bike, the jam nut has a serrated edge that's supposed to be frame facing, not hub facing. It's designed to grip onto the inner side of the frame dropouts. I know, right? Okay, look at that. So now what you have to do is you want to snug this up. You're going to go a little bit heavy, a little tight. It's going to be a little tight, just a wee bit tight. Then what you're going to do is you're going to use your little wrench and you're going to put it on the inner race, the human race. Okay, you with me so far? This is why you need these thin bicycle wrenches, by the way. That's what these are for. You stick it right in there. And then you're going to grab a hold of this with your tool and you're going to thread it's a fine tuning effort. A little balancing act. You're going to go back and double check. Still a little tight. Go back in there. And the idea is so what we're going to do is we're going to grab the jam nut on the other side and we're going to just tweak that bearing race out just a hair. Then we're going to grab our tools yet again. Slip them in there. It's a bit of a balancing act just to get the right amount of tension on these bearings. You don't want to go too tight with it, you know? Just like that. Again, check the axle for smoothness. Oh my God. Is there any smoother? I do feel a slight rumble in there, but again, we're not really dealing with high-end stuff, so I think it'll ride up with wear. Might be, that might be just a tad bit too tight. So I'm going to go once again, I'm going to take my wrench and I'm going to go back to it. And what I'm doing is I'm pulling, I'm actually turning the outer bearing race counterclockwise. See how that feels. Okay, that's perfect. That's pretty good. All right. And that, my friends, is how you do it. So let's get this wheel back on. We're going to get the derailleur all set up, and then we'll maybe do some cleaning. Tighten this down snug. Spins nice. Oops. Oopsers. Alright. Remember how we checked to see if the wheels are straight in the other bike? Well, this one, so what I'm doing is I'm looking down the frame. I'm using so we need to find a reference point. We're looking at the machined edge of the rim. Machined, no, it's not machined, but the brake surface. And we're looking at the brake mounting point. And we're using those two as reference points. And I'm seeing no movement of any kind. Then I'm going to look for any run out, and I don't see any. So straight wheel. How about the front? We didn't even check it, but we should. Obviously you're looking for any broken spokes. Now on a perfectly trued rim, the spokes should be fairly similar sounding. They should sound within a few octaves up or down of each other. When you hear, let's say you hear a dull thunk, like it goes ding 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 thunk ding 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 ding, then you've got a loose spoke. And that wheel should probably go to somebody with experience truing rims. Not too bad. But yeah, you can actually tell if a rim is in need of a tune-up, so to speak, if one or two spokes sound off. Like it'll stand out like a sore thumb, you know. But there's a whole method to madness on that one. Okay, what are we doing here? Gotta flip it upside down. We're gonna get it up on the stand on the makeshift gallows, and we're going to run it through its gears. But before we do that, I want to lubricate the chain. So how do I do that? Well, again, if you didn't follow that last video, we're going to take some WD-40 on a rag, soak it nice and good. This rag is junk, it's got grease all over it. I'm not running this through my washing machine. I'm going to soak it. And then we're going to roll the chain back, like so. Don't go too fast. Kind of get any of that, oops, got stuck in my garage. Just kind of get some of that crap off of the chain. This chain, again, this is pretty clean. This chain has no rust. I think it still has its factory lubrication on it, for crying out loud. Let's clean up these sprockets a little bit. Trying not to get the terry cloth wrapped up into the sprockets. That's fine. Clean up our jockey wheels. There's no buildup on these. Again, this bike doesn't have a lot of use on it. That's all the grease that was on that jockey wheel right here. That's it. So this is going to be an easier one than the last. That last bike, somebody actually used it for a while, it seems, before laying it up. Bring those up. Nice, nice, nice. This bike is making me into a liar. I was expecting a lot more problems. No, just a flat tire. So we're gonna put a droplet of oil on every link. Start by over-oiling it. Let it soak in and penetrate where it needs to go. This is way more oil than you need on a chain, but don't worry. And I'm gonna go ahead and zap the jockey wheels while we're down here. I'm gonna put a couple drops of oil in each one, and that'll work its way down into the sleeve bearings in there. Tilt the bike this way. Like that. Too much oil can be a bad thing. How? Oil attracts dust and dirt, and it's just can make a mess out of things. That very same dust and dirt that can cause excessive wear and tear on a lot of these components. So oiling a bike, or any machine for that matter, is a balancing effort. You want enough oil to do the job, but you also don't want too much, which can create a mess and end up causing excessive wear and tear. So, there you go. Okay, we're gonna let that chain kind of take that oil in a little bit. I'll work it in. Then we're gonna take our rag and we're gonna wipe all the excess oil off the chain. Just like that. That is how I oil a chain. Is it right? Probably not. Is there a better way? Absolutely, there always is. There's always a better way. But it works. At least for me. Okay. Enough funny stuff. Let's get the bike upside down. Right side up. I mean, downside, right side down. So we cleaned the rear rim up a little bit. Cleaned the axle. Or I'm sorry, the hub. And the axle, of course. Didn't really give it a deep clean like I did with that one. That one had a lot of grime buildup on those rims, so I used a quadruple zero steel wool pad with, you guessed it, WD-40, baby. Okay. Alright, I think now we're ready to run her through the gears and see where that happens to be. I also noticed that if you suspend a bike from the ceiling with parachute cord, it also creates an excellent musical instrument. See, let me demonstrate. And if I push down on the bike, speaking of tuning, shall we? Okay. Let's do this. We're going to get the derailleur into the front derailleur into the middle sprocket. Oh, wrong one. Nah. There we go. Middle sprocket. Now let's run the rear derailleur through all the gears. Check for alignment, noise, anything like that. Oh. Look at the brakes. That. Okay. And we'll go over brake adjustments on this one. I kind of skipped through that part on the Miata because it has some really funky brakes that most of you won't see in the real world. So, there we go. Sounds pretty good. Let's downshift. Oh, wait a minute. Ah. Okay, yeah, there is an alignment problem. Potentially. Looks like the derailleur might actually be bent on this bike. A little bit. Alright, let's downshift. Yeah, good. One gear at a time. Okay, now we have an alignment problem, for sure. And it looks like the derailleur may be bent. Believe it or not. Yeah. Well, maybe we can finesse it by pulling the cable out a little bit. We're going to use the adjuster on the derailleur itself, and it wants to jump gear. There we go. Oh, that's better. Alright, let's go back up to 1.
What would you like to play next?
Amelia, don't do that, please.
I'm not sure.
Okay, so let's do this. Sounds pretty good. I don't hear any jumping. Good, good, good. So what we just saw there, this could have actually left the factory perfectly in tune, but because the cable stretched naturally, it had to be compensated for by pulling this adjuster out just a wee bit. Good. Perfect. Now, you have some rubbing on this derailleur here. And we're going to pull the adjuster on. This one has an adjuster on the derailleur itself. I'm sorry, on the shifter, and that's the one we're going to manipulate to adjust that derailleur. So we're going to just do that up here on the handlebar side. Just turning the adjuster a little bit here and there. There we go. Perfect. That's what we want to see. Now let's drop it down. Make sure we didn't overcompensate. Look at this thing shake. Okay, perfect. Now we're going to get it down into granny low. That's super low gear. And I see a little bit of rubbing. Can we best adjust that? Maybe pull that in a little more. Let's see. The cable's still good and taut, so we're not really up against the adjuster at this point. So what we're going to have to do is lax up that cable a bit. Let's get it up into third. You know what we're going to do? I'm going to throw that back in. Okay. You know what? You know why it rubbed? I think it might be because the chain wheel's bent. Yeah, the chain wheel's bent. How do you like that? So, I think this one's just going to have to rub. Granny low. Yeah, it's like the derailleur just doesn't want to behave. And I do think there might be a slight bend in this chain wheel, so keep that into consideration. Let's get it up into third, or the third sprocket. Highest gear rubs a little bit. Okay, at this point, let's see if we can't tune that out. Now, the derailleur needs to swing out a little more on its third gear, or on its largest chain wheel. And generally, you can use this outer screw on the Acera derailleur. This one's your high, this one's your low. And in this case, let's see if we can get it. Yeah, it's not up against the adjuster, so it's not going to do us any damn good. So let's see. These are limits. That's all they really are. They're limiters. So they limit how far the derailleur can travel, not where it's located. You know what I'm saying? So if I put tension on this, wait a minute, I might have this backwards. I do. Yes, I do. Okay. So now what we're going to do is pull that out a little bit. Now it doesn't rub anymore. So what we did is we got it up against the adjuster. I think it's bouncing like a mofo. There we go. That's not too bad. Now, one of the things I like to compensate, I mean, this is the reality is there are improbable gear positions. You're never going to be in your largest cogwheel on this front sprocket and your largest sprocket in the rear. That's not probable. You won't be doing much of that. Most people won't be. So you're going to get some rub, and that's okay. At least that's the way I was taught when I was young. Okay. Now we need to tune out this rub here when we're at the largest sprocket in the rear and the middle sprocket in the front. There should be no rub in that position, but again, I think we have an out of true sprocket. Most definitely. Oh yeah. This sprocket is bent. There's not much we can do about that. It was probably made that way. So that's really unfortunate. And I'm going to have to mention that to the owner of the bike that, hey, by the way, you know, that's kind of a problem. So I'm going to adjust some of that out, the cable adjuster. Now let's run it through again. In the middle chain wheel, we get no rub. But now we can't get it into, oh, you know why? Because I have to readjust the, there we go. Alright, now, and granny low, where are we? Perfect, no rub. It's in the right here every time. Okay, go up to middle again, double check for rub. There's a little bit, but again, we have a bent chain wheel. Not bad, not bad, not bad. I think I'm going to do this. I'm going to dial it down just a bit more. Okay. Now up to the highest. Oops. Not bad. Most of the noise you're hearing right now is not rub, it's actually the chain against the cogs, which is fine. Teeth, I mean. And yeah, once again, we have a little bit of a rub because the whole crank is bent. And there you have it. Let's talk cable lubrication. Any bike that's sat for a long time is going to need it. In fact, even bikes that are used regularly. How do I do it on mine? Well, what I'll do is I will get the derailleurs into a position where I can slack up the cable. So for example, if I have the front derailleur on its highest chain wheel setting, and then I set the shifter to 1, the cable slacks up, and I can take it right out of its stays. Take it completely out. Very simple, makes it a lot easier that way. So you take the cable sheathing completely out of the picture. Then what you're going to do is, well, while we're here, we'll maybe kind of clean the cable, you know, kind of run a rag along it. And just kind of give it a good once over. Do one at a time to avoid strangulation. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take some oil. I use 3-in-1 non-detergent oil, and I'll rub the whole cable with oil. Now this will make a noticeable difference. On a bike that hasn't been serviced very much in most of its life, you're going to see a difference in the shifting quality, in the brake modulation especially, because when the cable can move freely, incremental movements are much easier, such as in brake modulation and shifting. It'll shift faster, more accurately, and less fuss. So I'm going to coat the cable with oil, and then I'm going to take the cable sheath and I'm going to put some oil. See what I'm doing here? I'm keeping the nozzle of the oiler at the front of the cable sheath as I drag it up the cable. And what that's going to do is it's going to suck oil right into the cable jacket or sheath. And then now I'm done with that. Put that in there. And I can do the same thing with the next one. And we're going to just take some oil and we're going to drizzle it on that cable as we drag the sheath along the cable. Now what does this also do? It saves the cable from excessive wear and tear. And once we're done with that, we can wipe off any excess oil. And that's it. Rinse and repeat for however many cables the bike's got. And for the brakes, just disconnect the brakes using the quick release like this, and you've just removed the tension from the brake cable, and you can do the same thing with the brake cables. Pretty simple stuff. Let's see if we can do anything about this gooseneck. Look in those handlebars. So they're made of, clearly they're made of steel. I'm going to try my best to do something with that. Now mine had a little bit of that going on from where it was sitting in a shed. This one was sitting behind a boiler, and apparently not a watertight one for many years. So we're going to try to clean this rust off as best we can using some steel wool, clearly. Unfortunately, it's almost as if this was like untreated, unpainted steel, and it just rusted. Could be far worse. Now, if this bike were left outside in the rain, we'd be dealing with basically a recon situation where we'd be just taking it all apart and maybe even sandblasting it all. And then giving it a coat of paint. However, this is cleaning up all right. Given what I'm not charging for this job, I'm not going to go nuts and take these handlebars completely off and repaint. I'm just not going to do that. Sorry. That's a lot of work. But if we can clean it up a little bit, make it look a little better, then we've improved this bike's appearance quite a bit. But a lot of the rust that comes off, so what really happens is you get a little rust spot, like a little breach in the paint or coating, and it begins to rust. And then it looks a lot worse than it is because that rust is spreading on the surface. That rust begins to kind of, as it gets wet, it runs and then it dries, and the iron oxide begins to, it's like when you've got somebody's hand covered in blood because of a tiny nick that just won't stop bleeding. It's kind of the same idea. But once you get down in there and you can clean all that rust off the surface, it ends up looking a lot better. A lot less intimidating. And I think that's what we have going on here. See, that actually doesn't look too bad. I'm quite impressed that it came out that good. But there's still more coming off, and the more I get in there and rub it down, the better it looks. Although there's one spot right here where it's just plain nasty. How much I'm going to be able to do with that. But let's clean this off. Look at that. Good as new, right? Well, sort of. So, it wasn't pretty, but now it's, well, it's a lot better looking. Clean the handle grips. This is another bike that's going to need new grips. Definitely need new grips. Now let's go ahead and lubricate the front brake cable. This one I don't have as much cable travel to work with, so I'm not going to be able to really get down and dirty in there, but we will get some oil in this cable. It's the last thing we ever do. It's going to take a little bit longer. You have to, a couple drops every few seconds, maybe work the cable back and forth a little bit. Eventually it'll soak down. It's a very short cable, so I'm not too concerned. But all the other cables are lubricated and they work real nice. Couple drops. Work it in a little bit. Yeah, and there we go. And now what we're going to do is we're going to hook up that front brake cable, and we're going to get it adjusted. I do believe it does need a little adjustment. Wipe it down, put it back in there, reconnect. And there we go. Make sure that that rubber boot that we took off goes back where it belongs. You can't see that on the camera, but if you have your brakes apart, you'll know what I mean. Okay, that works real nice. These were a little stiff when I brought the bike down here initially. Now, two ways we can adjust the cable. We can loosen it up at the caliper or at the cantilever arm, or we can just pull the adjuster out. Since the brake adjuster is all the way in right now, we're gonna thread it out a little bit and then tighten up the jam nut. There we go. That's nice. That's a good brake feel right there. Now just get that jam nut good and snug. Then we're going to go ahead and we're going to grab the rear brake and compare the two. Oh yeah, the rear brake, we're going to do the same thing to that. Thread it out and tighten up the jam nut. Nice. Very nice. Make sure it doesn't rub too much. Yeah? Hear it? It's going to rub a little bit, but yeah, not a high-end bike, so it's going to have its quirks. Okay. And that's it, folks. This bike is almost ready for the road. We just need to fix a tube. Front tire is holding air. The rear tire is good and flat. So what we're going to do is we're going to come back and we're going to get that tube taken care of. And that's it, man. Look at that. Now, we may end up having to replace that tube. If I find out that the puncture is either too close to the valve stem or it's far worse than I think it might be, we will have to order a tube, but only one tube. You don't, unlike tires, you don't replace tubes unless they're super old and they're dry rotted or ready to pop. You only replace tubes generally if they're just too badly damaged to patch. For example, if your kid, as I did when I was a kid, slammed on his brakes and slid down the street on a stopped rear tire, shredding the tire and the tube, well, you're not going to patch that, but that should be fixable. My battery is going to die on me, I'm aware. Let's get this bike off the makeshift bike stand and check the front bearings, the front fork bearings. Here we go. I got the front brake applied and I'm applying light pressure, and I'm feeling for any movement in the head tube. Where I feel none. It feels good and tight, and the handlebars move nice and freely. There's nothing going on there. Nothing funky. No need to re-grease. The handlebars are in line with the front wheel, so I don't need to realign the bars, which is usually a common problem on these bikes. There is some play in this suspension headset, or this gooseneck, but that's normal. That's just how it's made. Okay, so the good news is I just got my tube repair kit in the mail, so we can finish this bike and get it back to its owner pretty quickly, actually, I'm hoping. Okay, so I think it's pretty obvious what has to happen here. The rear wheel has to come off. Okay, how do we patch this tire? Well, we're not patching the tire, we're patching the tube. This is an inner tube style wheel. The process is pretty straightforward. The kit that I got was actually quite Spartan. I was expecting it to come with tire removal spoons, but this is the slime repair kit. You can find this at your local auto parts store, any bike shop, or really any place that sells these things. Should have this kit. Let's see what it comes with. Okay, so we get rubber cement. A couple of different patches of different sizes, mostly the round ones. We have a piece of sandpaper. That's important, we're going to need that. I haven't patched a tube in quite some time, but I think the process is still the same. But yeah, it doesn't come with the the tire spoons, or they're what you're supposed to use typically to remove the tire from the rim. But this should be pretty straightforward. So we're gonna get the camera angled right. Unfortunately, we only have to do one of these. So I don't even need the spoon. The tire just pops right off. There we go. No force needed. Nice. Once you get a little bit of the tire off the bead, you can use your fingers. So what you don't want to do is you don't want to take your favorite flat blade screwdriver and stick it in there to pry the bead off, because you can damage the tube even further. Furthermore, you can damage the rim if you are too aggressive with it. You can actually bend the soft aluminum rim, or just scratch it. So if you want to use the tire removal spoons, which are they're soft-edged chrome steel curved little things, they work pretty well. I haven't really had to use them, at least not in any wheel I've ever patched. So we're going to pull the valve stem, make sure the valve stem cap is off. Push it through, and then you just take your tube out. Being careful not to make you don't want to really pull it too hard. These tubes aren't meant for, not really designed for, being dragged against a sharp-edged rim, Okay, so we got the tube out. Now what we're going to do is we're going to visually inspect it, see if we can't find the hole. If we can't find the hole on our own, then what we'll do is we'll go ahead and put some air in there. And if that don't work, I find a pinch mark here. It's not great. Chances are the hole... Oh, I found it. Just kidding. I did not find it. Let's see. Okay. Now let's look around the valve stem. Sometimes, now if there's a leak at the valve stem, that could be pretty bad too. Sometimes the valve stem itself could be the problem. We might just find that to be the case. And if that's the case, I don't have a spare valve stem. You can replace these. You can pop these out and replace them. But I don't have one. So let's get a tire pump. Now, we're not going to fill this up with 50 pounds of air, because if we do, we'll have a small explosion. What will happen is the tube will inflate about 40,000 times its original size, and then blow up. We don't want to do that. Well, maybe we do, but I don't. Okay. Now I get some air in there. Where's the hole? It doesn't really want to hold air. Here we go. I hear it. I feel it. I see it. There it is. Wow. That's not a good place for it. It's actually right at the seam. So what we're going to do is we're going to mark. I'm going to just leave that there for now. I'm going to get a marker. And we're going to mark off where the hole is. So here we are. I got a marker. I ain't got a marker, but I do have a graphite pencil. Better than nothing. So we found the hole. That was pretty easy. Now, if you can't find the hole that quickly, if it's a very small or slow leak, one way you can do this is to get a little tub of soapy water. And there it is. I see it. It's quite visible. Now, this is not a hole caused by the rider hitting a nail or anything. If you look at this tube, this is a defect. This is a factory defect. So it's probably been losing air since day one. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. I'm going to keep a little bit of air in there, and we're going to scuff up this hole with our sandpaper. I don't know if my patch kit's going to fix this because it's at the seam. But we're going to try. Oh, we're going to try. So you want to rough up the surface really well with your sandpaper. Yeah, I don't have very good faith in this one. This tube may have to be replaced. But like I said, we're going to try and try some more. So, rough it up real well. The idea is to expose some nice, clean, bare rubber. Give us a nice surface to get our patch. But yeah, this is not good. It's a bad place for a patch, because you'll see that the surface is rough. Your patch needs a smooth surface to adhere to. And we don't have that. So. Okay, so we've marked off where the patch is going to be. And I'm going to grab one of these oblong patches. I think it might do a slightly better job. So this is where the patch is. We scuffed it up pretty well, about the same size as the patch itself. I have low hopes for this one. I don't think it's going to work for us, but just because of where the hole is, I'm not very confident. But we're going to try. We're going to try to save this poor guy's tube, and not only that, but it's just in a bad spot. But that's okay. All right. So this rubber cement, it's very pungent smelling. We're going to coat the patch with it, and I think we're supposed to put some on the tire as well. Now my dad used to do this. He would use a cigarette lighter to vulcanize the patch. I don't believe that's necessary. But what we're going to do is we're going to put the patch on there. I'm going to move it around a bit. I'm going to hold it into position. And this stuff is supposed to I should probably let more air out of the tube. There we go. Here. Already starting to cure to the rubber. It shouldn't take too long to cure completely. I think maybe I should read the instructions on the patch kit. Let's see what it tells me. Let's see if I'm doing it right. Okay, so if you look at the instructions, it says find the hole, scuff it up, put the rubber cement on the hole, put the patch on the hole, wait 5 minutes, and then after 5 minutes, remove the clear plastic covering. So yeah, I think we're doing it right. Right? Now what's going to happen is you're going to find that the outer edges of the patch will start melting away and melting into the rubber. And we're going to put some pressure on this guy because again, where it's located, we want that. What this rubber cement will do is it softens the rubber and it makes it kind of bond to itself. And we want to make sure that we get that nice good bond. I think what I'm going to do is I'm not going to put any air in the tube until it's in the tire because I don't want this patch to come on. See, when you put it when the tire when you put air in the tube and the patch is pressing up against the wall of the inner wall of the tire, it reduces the likelihood that the patch will come undone. It shouldn't come undone, but you know what I'm saying. If we were to blow it up right now or after this cures, I just would rather not. I just would rather not do that. So we're going to hold it there for like 5 minutes. I see the edges of the patch kind of giving away. You know, kind of melting into the rubber. This is a permanent bond, by the way. I mean, it shouldn't ever come undone, but you know, you never know. If this were my bicycle, given what I'm seeing here with where that hole is, I would probably be buying a new tube. But that's just me. It's not my bike, not my money. I'm going to let that sit a couple of minutes. I don't think I used enough rubber cement. Normally, I think you want the rubber cement to kind of come out the sides, but I don't see that happening here. So we're going to give it like 5 minutes, or 10, or 20. So one major reason why we don't want to start inflating this tube is because we don't want it to expand in diameter any more than we have to. And if we were to start filling it up right now with air, it could start expanding, which would stretch out the tube material more so than the patch, which would potentially debond the patch. So if you do want to check for any additional leaks, you can put just a minimal amount of air. Okay, we gave the patch plenty of time to cure. I don't think I used enough rubber cement, but let's just see what it does. If it doesn't work out, we're just going to get them a tube and we're going to charge them the $6 or whatever it costs. So here we go. We'll find the hole for the valve stem. We'll start by sticking the valve stem in the hole. There we go. And we're going to just pop the tube in, make sure it's not crooked or twisted. On a new tube, sometimes it's better to put a little bit of air in the tube to make sure that it goes in straight. And then, you know. Okay. The tube's in there. It doesn't feel or appear to be kinked or bent or anything like that, twisted. We go like that until we reach the other side. Getting the, just kind of slowly working the bead onto the rim. Done. Okay. Pull on the valve stem a little bit and go like this. Seat the wheel or seat the tire. There we go. Now we put some air in there and we pray that it solved our problem. Okay. I don't hear any leaking. That does not mean we're out of the woods. So what we're going to do, here. So what we're going to do is we're going to leave it for a little bit. I'm going to check it with a real pressure gauge, and we're going to see if it holds air. We'll give it a few hours or a day or two. pending that, or barring that, I think we're all set. So let's pop that wheel back on. We'll take her for a quick little test run. Okay, it's now, let's see, when did we leave off? 7 o'clock? It is currently 10:35, and I took the bike for a little spin. Let's see what happens. Is she holding? Or are we buying a tube? Moment of truth, guys. This is it. This is the final answer. Here we go. Brace myself here. And we are at 50 pounds. Okay? Tube is fine. I think we're good. Again, I rode it around the neighborhood. It actually rides quite nice. I mean, it's a, you know, I have to say, for a little, you know, step above a department store bike, it's not bad. It has the worst paint job of any bike I've ever seen, but the welds look pretty good. The componentry is holding up okay. While it does have a slightly warped crank from the factory, hey, it's not perfect, but it's a bike I'd probably own. It brakes nicely, it shifts nicely. In fact, when you get it on the road, it doesn't grind at all. No grinding, nothing. So I'm going to say that, not a bad little bike. It is uncomfortable though. The gooseneck has a lot of play in it, and I don't think there's anything I can do. You can see, here's why. The bushing is completely destroyed, so you'd have to find or make new bushings. I don't think you can buy bushings for this gooseneck. This is not a brand name. It's just a Taiwanese whatever. This is a suspension gooseneck that you might find on maybe even a Walmart bike. What I would probably do with this gooseneck is replace these bushings with solid handmade polyurethane bushings and just be done with it. There's a lot of play in there, and there's not a whole hell of a lot I can do about it. This is one of the reasons why you don't want to buy a department store bike, because as they age, certain components can become unobtainable. The compression bushing is still intact, but the rebound bushing is gone. In fact, I think a lot of this cracking occurred when I was riding it. I don't recall it being so bad. So as the handlebars go down, you know, there's plenty of cushion for the pushing. But on the rebound, see, look at that slot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull that nut off, and I'm going to see if I can rig up some washers maybe, and we can tighten this up, because this is really uncomfortable. So let's see what we can do. Alright, got me an Allen wrench, and we're going to try to figure this out, see if there's anything we can do for it. Maybe with some hardware store parts, maybe some washers. You know, I think I have a plastic spacer that might help. But this is incredibly uncomfortable when you're riding the bike. It's just painful because the handlebars are just all over the place, up and down, left and right. But look at this poor thing. It is gonzo. Totally gone. Just crumbled. It's actually turned soft. So now there's a nice little heavy duty grommet down in there. I bet you I can make something. Okay. I think I got something. I think I have something pretty close to what was in there. I got these grommets for restoring and repairing antique fans. Look at that. It fits perfect. Once I get some torque on it, check this out. This is ingenious. It fits perfect. It's a little too thick, but that's okay because we want some preload on there. You know what I mean? So let's get this. Get this in there. There we go. This is how you fix a department store bike, my friends. Now, this is not the bushing that gives it the downward resistance. This is the one that gives it the upward. It's like it provides like a bump stop for it. So we'll tighten this mother down all the way downtown. There we go. And now well, it kind of puts a little bit of a load on it, but it moves. Oh, it moves. It's subtle, but it moves. Here, let me try it. Yeah, it was perfect. Good and tight. Just what you want. And it didn't cost more than what? What's that, a 10-cent donut? Yeah, it has flex to it. Just what you want in the gooseneck. And it's not excessive and it's not too little. Puts that green one down. See, I think these were swappable with different colors, with different amounts of force, downforce, resistance. But that's good and tight. So we fixed the tube, we fixed the gooseneck, which turned out to be a problem later on. We went through the drivetrain, we greased the rear axle, adjust the brakes. Am I missing anything? Lubricated all the cables. Cleaned the rims, cleaned the frame. The only thing they did not agree to do was replace the handle grips because they don't want to put money into them. I respect that. So, what the heck? That's 2 bikes we saved. Actually 3, if you count my own. With minimal money. This bike didn't cost a dime. $5 for the patch kit, and this I had in there, in my stock. This new bushing. Let's see. Actually, no, the patch kit, yeah, that was $5, and I can fix more than one tire with that. Adjustments don't cost anything; those are free. Oil, just use whatever you got lying around. I didn't buy any special grease; I used what I had on hand. The only thing I really spent any money on fixing these bikes was on my own bike. I actually kind of put a little bit of cash into it. Now on my own bike, the only thing I bought were the hand grips and the front and rear shifters, which came with new cables. And those $14 for the shifters. I think the handle grips were $5 for the set, $10 maybe. The rest of it was perfectly fine. The tires were good. This one, like I said, 25-cent bushing. You can buy that at Lowe's or Ace Hardware or whatever. Yeah. The reason I made these last 2 videos is actually timely because coronavirus is hitting the world and people are struggling to find things to do, get outside as the weather warms up. People are buying bikes left and right. They're buying used bikes, they're buying new bikes, but most importantly, they're buying used bikes. And used bikes come with problems. It may not be obvious at first, but by following some of these videos that I've created, you can solve most of the common problems that you're going to find with a bike that's been sitting around. Now, if the bike's been sitting outside and it's rusting to hell, we're going to need a different set of videos. But for the casually disused bicycle, what I've just done will get you on the road fairly quickly. In the previous bike, we looked at a very nice quality bike from the mid-'80s, late 80s, and we just sort of went through it. We solved all of its little quirks, and we didn't really buy any parts. For that bike, we bought no parts. We did nothing to it. We just cleaned and lubricated using what was there. With this bike here, we had to patch the tube and we had to replace the bushing. With my Raleigh C30, unfortunately, it saw some rodent damage to the handle grips and to the shifter grips as well. We also had to replace the inner tube protector band on both wheels because those had fallen off. So we did that with electrical tape. Just a couple wraps each wheel. Probably, I think I did like 4 wraps. Get it nice and thick. It'll work fine. Until then, I had a lot of fun doing these, actually. These 3 videos, I think I had more fun doing these than any other video I've ever done before. Bikes are quick, easy, and cheap to fix. And I think I might get some more. Why not? I'll start looking for another project bike and or try to find bikes family and friends own and do the same thing. Go through them, adjust them, clean them, make them new again. Until then, have a great day and stay safe. Another successful repair.